Welcome to the video lecture about research methods in psychology. Almost everybody has participated in a research method, even if they don't know it. This can be taken through a survey, through paper, internet survey, somebody observing you, or taking part in an experiment. To study the field of psychology, as with most fields, it takes research. To do this, we use a scientific method to ask questions, we test hypotheses, make observations, and either prove or disprove our theories. Much of the psychology research is through observation. If you like to watch people down at the local Walmart, then this one is for you. The problem with observation is that we must define things in very concrete terms and then find an instrument that can detect those terms. So if we're watching people at Walmart and we want to observe and see how many people are wearing sweatpants, we can't just say sweatpants. We have to make that very measurable. Gray sweatpants, elastic band, are they pulled down past where they shouldn't be pulled down? Are they too tight? Those kinds of things can be very, very clearly defined. So it takes some thinking. Good measurements must be both valid and reliable. To be valid, an instrument must measure what it's supposed to measure. For example, you wouldn't use a thermometer to see how much you weigh. You'd use a scale. To be reliable, it must produce the same measurement whether it is used to measure this and whether it uses to measure the same thing. So if you want to measure my temperature, you're going to use a thermometer every single time because it will most likely yield the same results. You won't use a scale each time to measure my temperature. Sometimes we see what we expect to see, or we behave how we expect to behave, and this is called observer bias. So researchers have to be really prepared to eliminate this. There are many research methods that can be used to try and explain why people do what they do. We look for patterns, relationships, correlations, other variables, and then we have to use critical thinking to look at the potential evidence. In psychology, we always must act in ethical ways. We'll talk about other research studies throughout these videos. One is the Stanford prison experiment, where they use some unethical behavior, or the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Those are things you can look up to see what not to do in the form of research. So we have to be ethical. We have to make sure that nobody gets hurt, and to do that we use institutional review boards, and we have to set up our research to uphold the principles of respect for our participants. We make sure we do no harm, and we use a whole lot of methods to preserve our justice and the justice of the participants. We must get an informed consent, which is usually a document that talks about that the participants are not forced to do the research. They have to agree to do it. They are discussing the risks and the benefits, because everything has a risk and a benefit. We cannot lie to them, be deceptive. We'll talk about that later. And we must maintain the participants' confidentiality to a certain extent. Psychologists are obligated to respect the rights of animals too, if they choose to use animals in their psychological research. So once the study is complete, psychologists are obligated to tell the truth about their studies. That doesn't always happen. They must share the credit with other researchers, so if many people are working on the same project, they have to give credit where credit is due, which is why it's so important when students do research papers, they give credit where credit is due. They let others look at their data, which is what students are looking for. They look for the data in those research articles when they give the credit where credit is due. And they must try to maintain the integrity of the field and contribute to the body of knowledge. And that's really what it's all about. So next time somebody comes up to you and asks you to take a survey, you might want to think twice, because you need to know where your information and where your data is going to end up.